Hey, I'm Liv, welcome back to my channel Endless Pages and welcome to today's video, which is my May-June reading wrap-up. Thank you so much for tuning into today's video. I'm going to be chatting with you guys about what I read in the month of May and June. We've got a lot of books to get through, so I'm going to try and be as concise as I can with my reviews. I know if you've watched one of my wrap-ups before, you probably know I'm not very concise and just end up repeating myself and rambling, but we're going to try our best to be quick and concise today so that this video is not 3 hours long. Let's start with my first read of May, and that is Gamora and Nebula, Sisters in Arms by Mackenzie Lee. This is, I guess you describe it as like Marvel fanfiction. I'm still a little bit in my Marvel fatigue, so add that little bit of bias to my review, but this is basically this version of what if something different happened between the two sisters. Basically, Gamora gets this mission from Thanos to go to this planet and steal the heart of the planet. Nebula finds out, follows her sister to the planet, and they uncover kind of a big conspiracy on the planet. I first read this for a read a chapter video. I'll pop it up in my cards. And I found the first chapter really good. It really surprised me and really pulled me into the story. I think it was a strong start to the book. However, then this is just a little bit too YA middle grade for me as a 28-year-old, I think. It was not a horrible read. Like, I was interested in some parts. However, I think the ending really ruined it for me, because the ending just kind of seemed to undo the character growth of certain characters, and we had our two sisters go through this huge, big, hard mission together where a lot of shit went down. There was a lot of near misses and danger, and there was a lot of kind of growth between these two characters, and it felt very undone by the ending. And it kind of felt like, well, what was the purpose of this book, and seeing these characters grow and learn to kind of trust one another if we're just going to undo all that at the end. But honestly, that seems to be like the theme of Marvel at the moment. This is going to take me on a tangent when I start. I'm going to try and be concise. But again, like in Marvel movies, why are we sacrificing all these characters, saying goodbye to them? I won't say who in case you don't want spoilers, but you know, these characters of the original Marvel Cinematic Universe that we've grown to love, and we've had these nice goodbyes for the character and said, okay, we're wrapping up this story and we're moving on to some other Marvel characters, for you to just bring them back, and it undoes the sacrifice, it undoes their character growth. And yeah, so Marvel seems to be really good at that, even though this is Mackenzie Lee and it's not a Marvel movie, it's a fan fiction book, but same idea. We seem to have undone all of the progress and character growth of the story on the final page. That is all I really have to say about this book. I don't really have much more to say. The writing was okay, the story was semi-interesting, but I just think this book's a little bit too young for me, and that's okay. And I think maybe I still have quite a bit of Marvel fatigue. So I ended up giving this 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great, just very meh. And yeah, I will be unhauling this book, I think. Next up, I listened to Battle Royale. This is by Koshan Dakami and translated by Nathan Collins. This is kind of the book that loosely inspired the Hunger Games, I believe. This is a book set in Japan, and we follow a bunch of Japanese classmates who have been chosen by the government to fight to the death until there's one student left standing. They're kind of trapped on an island with like collars around their necks, so if they try and escape, their heads get blown up, and you follow this class as they pick each other off kind of one by one. I was so keen for this book. It sounded so up my alley, especially knowing the fact that it inspired the Hunger Games in kind of some way, shape or form. I found this really boring. It's really long and it's so boring. I even audiobooked this. I think if I was physically reading it, it would have been even more of a struggle than it already was to audiobook it. Basically, we follow one main male character throughout the book, but we do tend to jump from perspective to perspective, so we can kind of see some of the kills as they happen on this island. And I think it's an interesting concept in terms of how these students react to the situation, and how it really kind of showed, or was just an excuse for some of them to show their true nature. My issue with this book was that it was so boring. we spend so much of the book learning about all the kind of interpersonal, if that's the right word, relationships between all of the students. This one's friends with this one's dating this one, and this one's this, and this is this personality, and this one plays violin. And that's what I felt like majority of the focus of the book was, getting to know these students, rather than focusing on the fact that they're having to fight one another to the death. So that was really boring, and I was like, I don't give a shit which one played violin and which one was which one's girlfriend. I'm here to see them kill each other off, which sounds awful, but it was so boring. I cannot believe a book about students killing each other off was boring. I don't know how that's possible, but it was. It was also kind of sexist, to be honest. The way this author wrote about female students was no other way to describe it other than sexist. Yeah, overall an incredibly disappointing read. I found the kills very unsatisfying. I found the pace excruciating. I found the writing boring. I found that there was just way too much thought put into all of the different characters' relationships to each other. That was also impossible to keep track of because there were so many students and they all seemed kind of to be connected in one way or another, and then we kind of had these stupid ass flashbacks to them in high school with each other, and just information that I don't know if it was there to kind of make the fact that you were watching them die more impactful because you were getting to know them, but it didn't have that effect on me. I was like, I don't give a shit about these people's hobbies. I don't give a shit. So yeah, overall a really, 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 really disappointing read. I had such high expectations for this, to be honest. I think, I'm trying to go on my phone and see what I rated it to tell you. I think I'll still give the movie a watch. My colleague said the movie is really good, and I feel like it might be better in a more concise 2-hour story rather than this super chunker. But yeah, a book that I expected to absolutely love, but I absolutely did not love. And what did I rate it? Let's see, so I can tell you. I ended up rating this 3 stars. 3 stars, which I think might be a bit generous, but yeah, disappointing. Next up, I read The Burning God by R.F. Kuang, the third and final book in the Puppy War trilogy. Now this was a fantastic book. At some point in this year, I can't remember what months because I don't track my rereads, and me and wrap-ups, as you can tell, this year haven't been very, very well done, but I reread The Puppy War, then The Dragon Republic, and finally stopped being a chicken and finished this series. And my god, I am so mad at myself that it took me so long to do this, because this was absolutely fucking fantastic. This is one of the best fantasy series I have ever read in my entire life. I can't say much because this is book 3, but I sobbed, I laughed, I couldn't put this book down. This is like a 500 page 600 page fantasy book, and I couldn't put it down. Whenever I wasn't able to read it, I was thinking about it. Every spare second I could find, I was reading this book. I have never read a fantasy book so fast in my life. Absolutely fantastic. The ending as well, after I finished this book and finished crying, I put the book down. I was like, there was no other way this book could have ended. It was a perfect ending. I think it always was going to end like that. It always had to lead to that. And I found that incredibly satisfying, although it was devastating. It wasn't a good satisfying, but it was like, that was how it had to end. And I think R.F. Kuang is a fucking genius for writing that ending, because of course it was going to have to end like that. This book is like emotionally devastating and horrible and traumatic, especially after I learned that some of these scenes are based off actual Chinese military history, which makes some of these massacres and scenes quite confronting to read, so please do check your trigger warnings. But I think Rin is such an incredibly interesting female character, so if you're looking for good fantasy with interesting female characters, this is the series for you. I am so devastated I'm finished this series now, because it was just such a roller coaster, and I think eventually I will have to start the series from the start again and go back. But yeah, this is one of the best fantasy series I have ever read, and I'm so sad I'm finished 5 stars. Next up, I read The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels. This is by India Holton and the first in the Dangerous Damsel series. This sucked. The reason I read this book is because years ago I bought the sequel, not realizing it was a sequel. So I had a feeling that it probably wasn't going to be my vibe, but I was like, before I just unhaul the sequel, let's give the first book a go. I could be surprised. I wasn't. I didn't like this book. So the plot of this book is this lady thief belongs to this kind of like society of rich white pirate ladies, and she meets this kind of henchman, and I don't know how to describe the plot of this book. Basically, her father's evil and they have to fight against her father. Kind of have to learn to work to trust one another and work together, and they're falling in love. This was really bad. I found this, I think I listened to this on audio and I found it excruciating to listen to, probably because it's so not my vibe. I think my issue with this book was the constant, like, I don't know how to describe it. I'm not very smart. Like, let's just say like how they talk in Bridgerton, that old English kind of talk. That's the only way I can think to describe it. They talk like that the whole book and it is excruciating. I can't do that talk. The whole like 7-hour audio, that's how they were talking, and I was like, get me out of here, it's like torture. So that was really painful, and it was really annoying. Like it's boring. You just follow a bunch of like posh white people going around, and they just like were on their high horses the whole book. This review is very weird. But yeah, so you follow the main character, whose name I can't remember. Cecilia. So you follow Cecilia and her, I think it's her aunt. Yes, it's her aunt. And they're very prim and proper posh English ladies. And the whole book, they just constantly reminding you that they're better than everyone because they're posh and because they have manners, and it's just one of those books where they're perfect at everything, and I hate when characters are like that because I'm like, this is so unrealistic. Everyone has a flaw. Everyone is not perfect at everything they do, and when you have these characters that are just incredible at everything they do, it is so painful to listen to because it's so boring. How are you supposed to have character growth if you are so egotistical that you don't think that you can improve upon anything? And it's just like constantly like, yeah, I'm gonna be great at that, I'm great at that, I'm great at everything, and it's really painful to listen to. And it's just, they spend this whole book telling everyone about how to have better manners, but they're thieves. They're thieves, and they steal and they lie, but they on this like high horse about their manners and that their status in society, but they're pirates. So the two just don't seem to go well in my book. They're just talking about how everything is so improper and everyone's so improper, and the main character Cecilia and her aunt always saying, you have to do things the proper way, that's not ladylike, that's not proper, but you're thieves. So the two just don't work together. I'm like, you're a hypocrite. You're a hypocrite. And I just hated that the characters are like incredible at everything they do. They're constantly winning fights. To me, there's no tension as well when you're perfect at everything you do and constantly winning and outsmarting everyone. I don't feel tension in the book because I know you're gonna win. If that makes sense. But yeah, my biggest beef was like the old English talk. I couldn't do it. It was painful. I was like, I don't know why I finished this book because it felt like I was being tortured, but I did finish this book for some stupid reason. I've mentioned this recently before. I've seemed to have lost my ability to DNF books, but yeah. That's my beef with this book. I ended up rating The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels 3 stars, and I won't be reading the sequel. I will be unhauling that. Next up, I read Dungeon Crawler Carl. This is by Matt Dinnerman and the first in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. I fell for the hype. I have never fallen for the hype of a book so quickly. I was like, everyone will not stop talking about this book. I have to know what the hype is. It's just absolutely blown up in the book world. So this is like this world where this alien species comes and basically like just wipes out planet Earth, and anyone that survived, they kind of gave you an option to go through this random door. So we follow our main character Carl as he decides to go through this door, and anyone that goes through the door survives. Everyone else on Earth has been wiped out, dead, and all of the humans that went through the doors are being forced to compete in this dungeon crawler-esque. It's like a video game. It's like a video game. I don't know much about video games, where you crawl through the levels of the game defeating different creatures. So yeah, Carla's now being forced to compete to survive in this dungeon, and he is accompanied by his girlfriend's cat, Princess Donut. I had a lot of fun with this book. I'm not a video game girl, so I don't think I was able to fully appreciate all the video game-esque references and language in the book, but I think it was explained enough that you don't need video game knowledge to enjoy the book, because I really enjoyed this book. It was really fun. I think the humor is what stands out as like the star of this book. I think it's very laugh out loud funny. I laughed a lot in this book, and doesn't happen a lot for me. I don't really usually read a lot of comedic type books, so I had a lot of fun with the humor of this book. I will say one negative thing is I can see why people have beef about how he writes about women sometimes in this book. I can see that that is not great, and I'm hoping as I continue on with the series that that goes away, because it is something that irked me a little bit. I didn't quite appreciate that aspect of it, and I hope that goes away as I continue to read the books. But I think that this was a really fun, fast-paced adventure. I really think it's quite a unique storyline as well, which I think really pulled me in. I've never quite read anything like this before. I will say I gave this 4 stars, and don't get me wrong, I had a really great time with this series. I think it was fun. I will definitely continue on with the series. Do I think it is the most incredible writing I've ever read? No. I think that maybe there's a little bit of overhype about this series. I think for how popular it was, I was expecting better writing. I don't think the quality is amazing, but honestly I think it's a series that I can just forgive that a little bit and just honestly see it as a fun time and take it for the fun time that it is. So yeah, I gave Dungeon Crawler Carl 5 stars. It was really fun, and I hope to continue the series soon. Next up, I read Wild Dark Shore. This is by Charlotte McConaughey. I think that's how you say her name. This is incredible. I am not going to be able to do this book justice, but basically we follow this family that is on this island kind of in between Australia and the Arctic, and they are there because there's kind of a research team on this island, and the family kind of keepers of the island. And on this island is a thing called a seed bank, which is a real thing that we do have in real life, where basically if the planet goes to shit, you know, climate, whatever reasons, then we have a vault of a bunch of seeds that we can use to replant the planet and feed ourselves, basically. So the family are kind of the keepers of this island where this seed bank is, and in the first chapter of the book, this mysterious woman washes up onto this island, and they're like, how the fuck did she get here? This is really remote. It's not an easy island to get to, and the woman that washes up discovers that the family have secrets of their own. This was an incredibly moving story. We kind of have 2 parts to this book. The first is the dynamics of the family and the family healing from the loss of their mother/wife, and then we have a mystery suspense aspect to this book as well. So I think this is maybe one of the best written books I've ever read. The writing is just absolutely fantastic, and I really enjoyed the exploration of grief and how it affected all of the different members of the family so differently, and how they dealt with it so differently, and how that grief manifested. I think that that was really beautiful. I really enjoyed the climate commentary of this book. I think I have never felt so connected to animals in my life. The way they describe these children's relationship with these seals. There's a seal population on the island. I have never sobbed over seals before in my life, but I was sobbing over seals. It was such a beautiful way to show, I don't know, like how incredible nature is, how like perseverant animals are, despite what humanity does to the planet and does to their populations. I was so moved by our character's relationship to the animals, and I think that was a beautiful way to get us thinking about our impact on animals and their lives. I think that that was a really moving way to get you thinking about that. Plus the suspense of this whole mystery of everyone's secrets on this island. How did this woman end up washing on the island? What secrets are the family hiding? I think it was very well done. We got snippets throughout where we thought we then had the whole picture and we really didn't. And I think that was a really good way to keep the suspense going. And it was just so tense. And it was just a beautiful story about the power of relationships between human and animals and humans, and how the power of relationships can heal us and keep us going in the darkest of times, and yeah, how a certain person can make such an impact on your life. It was beautiful, it was moving, it was absolutely devastating. When I said I sobbed, I sobbed. There's tear marks on the pages. It was a library book, whoops. There's now tear marks on the pages. I sobbed for the last 50 pages of the book and then sobbed for another 10 minutes after I finished it. I just sat there just in silence. It was beautiful. I gave this 5 stars, easy 5 stars, maybe one of the easiest 5 stars I've given recently. This is an incredible book. If you like climate fiction, read this. If you like stories of human relationships, read this. If you like suspense, read this. It's got something for everyone. And I'm going to go read all of her books now because holy shit, what a talent. And she's Australian too, so double cool. Moving on to my June reads. June, I participated in the amazing readathon, so I read quite a few books for this month. So let's start with the first, Carrie Soto's Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Absolutely great book. We get introduced into the character of Carrie in Malibu Rising, which I read maybe in April, something like that. And I was very reluctant to go into Carrie Soto because of how it introduced to her character very briefly in Malibu Rising, and I think that's very purposely done. Now that I've read Carrie Soto, I'm like, very well done, that's very clever. But yeah, so basically Carrie Soto is an ex-tennis champion. She is pretty much like one of the best female players of all time, and she is retired, and then this new young up-and-comer comes in and is about to break her Grand Slam record. So Carrie Soto says, I can't accept that. She is not taking my record off me, and at the age of, was it 30 or 40? I'll put it on the screen, I can't remember. At the age is old for tennis, which is not old, but old for the sport, decides to come out of retirement and defend her championship. This was a really good book. I didn't expect to like this. I didn't expect to like Carrie Soto, but I think it's a great representation of, I guess, how differently we talk about male sports people compared to female sports people. In male sports, that competitive, aggressive nature is kind of seen as someone, a male sportsman, being really driven and motivated and great at the sport. But in a female sports player, it's seen as catty and, yeah, very looked down upon. And I think Carrie Soto is a very flawed character. She's not perfect, and she can be very selfish and very tunnel vision, but I think she's a very interesting female character to read from. It was so incredibly moving watching her fight to get back to where she was and kind of the reality that she was in, competing against women that are half her age, just at the start of their careers, no injuries, their bodies are different, the way their bodies react are different, and it was just like this really interesting story of her fighting to keep that Grand Slam. And we kind of go back to, we pretty much follow her career. We go back and see how she started in her career, what it was like to be trying to up and come as a woman in tennis, and how she was treated compared to a lot of her male counterparts at the time, as well as seeing how people were talking about her in the current timeline where she's coming back, and that kind of, I guess, public opinion of her, how that has stayed the same in terms of how they viewed her as vicious and cunning and, yeah, how they'd say a male sportsman was driven and motivated. She was vicious and cunning and catty. So that was a really interesting commentary. It's also a nice story of her relationship with her father, which is really beautiful. And yeah, her relationship with the game of tennis, how her drive affects her relationships with men and the relationship she's attempted to have in her life. And I was really blown away. I shouldn't be blown away because I love Taylor Jenkins Reid, but I was really blown away by how much I enjoyed this story, being someone that's not at all really interested in tennis. Yeah, so I really enjoyed this. I ended up really loving Carrie Soto, which really surprised me, but I think she's a very flawed and interesting character, and I'm like, I think I like tennis now. It's actually funny, I just finished reading this at the time Serena Williams announced her comeback, so that was very, very crazy timing, because again, everyone's saying, you know, a woman of her age coming back into tennis as I just finished Carrie Soto, so that was very funny timing. I ended up giving Carrie Soto Is Back 4 out of 5 stars. Another book I ended up sobbing at the ending. Books have been challenging me at the moment. I've been going through an emotional roller coaster. So yeah, I loved this book. Next up, I read Quiet in Her Bones by Nalini Singh. This is a thriller. We follow this son, his mother Nina, I think it was like, I can't remember how many years ago, 5, 10 years ago or something like that. No, more than 5. Something. When he was a child, his mother ran away from them, like ditched his himself and his father, and took like a shit ton of cash with her on the way, and she has never been heard of or found since. And then her body is suddenly found all this time later, and we are trying to figure out what happened to Nina, the mother. So we are reading in the perspective of the son of Nina, and first issue of the book was the son. He was just like absolutely painful to read from. He's a very arrogant and unlikable main character, which meant I was really struggling and reluctant to pick up the book because I hated reading from his perspective. There was also so much repetition in this book. They kept like reminding you of the same information over and over, and I think that was their way of saying, hey, you need to remember, this is important, which really pulls me out of the story, to be honest. I don't need to be told the same information a million trillion times. It makes the plot just so, it makes the plot drag because I'm just reading the same stuff over and over again. So it was boring in that regard too. The setting of this book is this kind of really well-to-do, really wealthy neighborhood. So we spend so much of this book getting to know all the different neighbors, and like it is relevant to the reveal, some of these neighbors, but we get to know so many of the neighbors and we don't spend a lot of time with each of the neighbors, which means that I can't keep them straight in my head as I'm reading this book, and there's just too many neighbors being introduced, and so many of them didn't end up having that much to do with the reveal. So I was like, why are we meeting these people? They're not moving the plot forward at all. Finally, I found the reveal very unsatisfying, and yeah, I was just very disappointed. I kept reading because I always do that with thrillers. I'm like, maybe the reveal will be worth it, and every time I'm disappointed. It's not. The reveal was not worth it, not satisfying, and we also had quite a big major subplot unanswered about our narrator of our book. A lot of things introduced about him and his personality, which why he's so unbearable to read from, and they just kind of go unanswered and unfinished. So a very unsatisfying ending. I ended up rating Quiet in Her Bones 3 stars. Next up, I read Across a Field of Starlight by Blue Delaquente. This is a science fiction graphic novel. We follow these 2 non-binary characters that meet as kids when this character, I can't remember which name's which. I think this is Fasten and this is Lou. I could be wrong. Anyway, basically this character, they kind of are like, I guess you describe them as like junkers. They like go out and grab sciencey equipment off planets, and this character is like trapped on that planet, and they meet as kids, kind of grow a little bit of a bond, and then as they grow, secretly are in communication with one another. This character is part of this community where they all live together, and you don't really have to work for your basic human rights like food and shelter, and this character is a soldier against this evil, I don't know how you describe them, they're like an evil, typical science fiction evil corporation vibe. So they live two very different lives, and I liked the exploration of that in this story. How like the juxtaposition of these two characters' completely different lives. This character comes from a supportive environment where they don't know like what it is to want for things like their basic human rights. They have food and shelter and you don't have to work for those things, whereas this character is a soldier and constantly has to fight for everything that they have, and you know, is paid shit all, like barely any rations. So I think it was an interesting exploration of what life could look like if you are given your basic human rights, and if you don't have to worry day by day where your next meal is going to come from, and what humanity can accomplish if that wasn't a struggle for a lot of people. So that was an interesting exploration. The illustrations were gorgeous, the colouring gorgeous, but this book overall is really confusing. A lot of scenes that just abruptly ended, didn't go anywhere, a lot of confusing science fiction shit that's never really explained nor put into a context where I could explain it, or could understand it, I should say. Yeah, the story didn't feel like it had any flow because the scenes just really abruptly ended. I think the message was nice about not needing for food and shelter, and the accomplishments you could have in this society, and in this society where everyone is so accepted for who they are and no one has to hide themselves or fear ridicule or persecution, and it's just like how good we could look if we were like that as people. Yeah, and the power in like a sense of community. I think that was a nice message. I just think the story was not great, and I think my one thing I think is that this would have been really a lot better as a series rather than a one-off novel. The plot was so big and we were just, you know, had interesting aspects of the rebellion and this evil AI thing that's never really explored, just kind of defeated. So I think something of this proportion in terms of like the plot and the, you know, the evil AI and a lot of stuff going on, it would have been better as a series rather than just shoved into one book. So I ended up giving Across the Field of Starlight 3.5 stars. Next up I read Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang. We follow June, our main character, and June is friends with this woman called Athena, who is a very successful author. June, on the other hand, is pretty much a failed author at this point. Athena suddenly dies unexpectedly, and June gets her hands on her manuscript before she dies of her latest book that she was planning on publishing. June then publishes that book herself, and this book is about the chaos that and the consequences of that decision, as June is a white woman and she has published her Asian friend's book that is, yeah, a very personal book to her. So this is about a white woman justifying her actions, basically. June is one of those type of people that thinks the world is out to get them, that bad things are happening to her because the universe is out to get her. Everything is never her fault. That's the kind of person June is. And this book explores how June justifies publishing her friend's book as a white woman. And it's just a fascinating book exploring how June justifies this and thinks it's okay. I think in the back of her head there's moments where you can see that June knows that this is not an okay thing to do and quite a horrible thing to do, but she kind of gets this enragement that a lot of people seem to suddenly have for some reason, that they're not getting what they want because of like DEI, diversity, and they think that they're not getting what they want in life because someone's been like token picked for their nationality or their race, or you know, whatever, that they're not actually the people that are picked are not actually deserving of it. They've just been picked to fill some kind of diversity quota. And that's June's attitude in this book, is that she thinks that people, and her friend is not getting the advantages she has in life, not because of her merit, not because she's a great author and that's why she's successful. It's that because she's a person of color. So that's how June justifies it's okay to publish this book, because she's a great author, she deserves it, and the odds are against her. It's just reflective of this horrible attitude throughout human history where things are hard or you're not having a good time, so you find someone to place that blame on. And that ends up being people of color a lot of the time. We see it over and over again. And it's just the whole book is her justifying her actions, even though deep down I think she knows it was so the wrong thing to do. And I love seeing June kind of deteriorate through this book and be haunted by what she's done. There's one particular scene which I found so incredibly hard to read. It was meant to be painful, of where she's really faced with what she's done, really head-on confronted by it, and in that moment she truly knows what she's done is wrong. But despite that, you continue to see her justify it and really convince herself throughout this book what she's done is right. I think Arif Kwang also said it's also kind of meant to be a commentary on cancel culture and kind of the toxicity of online culture, how we just see one thing without evidence and everyone jumps on that bandwagon, everyone cancels that person. And yeah, so it was a really interesting commentary on kind of the toxicity of these online cultures and yeah, I guess people's like critical thinking skills, or I think the idea of groupthink, and we cancel one person, forget about it, move on to the next. So it was really interesting commentary on cancel culture as well. I think this was a fantastic book. June is such a fucked up woman to read from the perspective of, and I think this book has really good things to say, but it does it in such a humorous way, which seems kind of messed up, but Arif Kwang said it is meant to be a funny book. There's this quote in the book that I really like, and it's June justifying why she's made some changes to the book, and why she's changed some of the kind of racial like elements of this book. And she goes, "It's not all about pandering to authority. I do think we've made the book better, more accessible, more streamlined. The original draft makes you feel dumb, alienated at times, and frustrated with the self-righteousness of it all. It stank of all the most annoying things about Athena. The new version is a universally relatable story, a story that anyone can see themselves in." Yeah, I think that's such an interesting commentary, because it's like bringing up the past, or how a country's people have treated other countries or minorities in the past, acknowledging that is a threat. And that's how she says, you know, it's make you feel dumb and alienated. So I think that was really clever and well done. And yeah, I think it's frustrating that people are threatened by diversity. I don't understand why we're threatened by diversity. Like, so many people in the past have had no media or books where they can see themselves reflected in the story or reflected in the character. Now that we're having such well, not an amazing, but a better focus on diversity in our books and media, so many more people can see themselves reflected in stories. And like she says, the new version is a universally relatable story that anyone can see themselves in. Like, people seem to be threatened by that diversity for some odd reason. So that was a very interesting commentary on that. I overall loved this book. I loved the ending. I was like, yep, that pretty much makes sense. That's on character. So it was a very, very well done ending in my opinion. And yeah, I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read Christmas Presents by Lisa Unger. I honestly only read this because there was a specific prompt I needed to meet for the Amazing Readathon. This is a crime novella. I can't really remember. I can kind of remember what this is about. That's right. We have a true crime podcaster, Harley Granger. He drifts into Madeline Martin's bookshops days before Christmas. He seems intent on digging up a past that Madeline would much rather forget. The podcaster's work has earned him fame and wealth, and some serious criticism for his various unethical practices. Granger also had a lot of questions about the night Madeline was left for dead, the only surviving victim of Evan Handy. Handy, who also murdered Madeline's best friend and is suspected in the disappearance of 2 local sisters, has been in jail for a decade. Since then, though, 3 other young women have gone missing in similar circumstances. Is the true predator still out there somewhere? blah blah blah. So basically this is just the reopening of a decades old case. I didn't really love this. I didn't think it was that great. I think the podcast element was unnecessary. I think I would have enjoyed it more if it was just Madeline re-looking into her past and the person that attacked her. I think that's all I have to... I literally can't remember much about this book. It was very uneventful, apparently. But yeah, I think I didn't like the podcast element. He was an annoying character anyway. I think I kind of enjoyed the reveal. This book probably wasn't that great if I have no memory of it. But yeah, the one thing I do remember was that I think I've learnt that I don't like thriller novellas. To be honest, I've learned that in the month of June. I think it was too short to be at all satisfying. It felt very rushed. I think the book could have been quite good if it was longer, if it didn't have the podcast element. And that's literally all I can remember about this book, sorry. So I gave it 3.5 stars apparently. So yeah, that's my review. Speaking of thrillers I didn't like, then I read One by One by Ruth Ware. This again was because I had a specific prompt I needed to read for the Amazing Readathon. Otherwise I probably would have never read this book. I was looking for a claustrophobic thriller. This really wasn't it. This basically follows this... I think they're like a tech company. They run this like music app thingy, and they go on like a team bonding exercise to like a ski resort, and you follow the worker that works for the ski resort. I don't know what you'd call her. She's not really a maid, but yeah, she like lives in the ski resort place and is there to serve the guests of this tech company. And there is a big avalanche, and they are trapped during an avalanche, and there is a murderer amongst them. I didn't really love the main character in this book. I found her a little bit annoying, so that didn't help. I remember not enjoying the mystery or the reveal. I didn't think that the tension was that... the tension wasn't that great until the very... even then. No, I'm sticking to my thoughts. The tension wasn't great. I think the reveal of the murderer was also not great. I definitely think it was very easy to see coming based on how they talked about that certain character and how often they reminded you that that character was that kind of way. I'm trying to not spoil. So yeah, I also don't have much to say about this one other than I found it really boring and excruciating, and I didn't like it. So I gave this one also 3.5 stars. Next up, I read Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. This is a Greek mythology retelling of the Princess of Crete, Ariadne, and the legend of like the Minotaur. Basically, Ariadne, Princess of Crete, her father, King of Crete. Her mother, Queen of Crete, is punished by the gods and ends up giving birth to what they describe as like this monstrosity who ends up being the Minotaur. Her father, the King of Crete, is very power hungry, and as punishment to the people of Athens, he once a year grabs a boatload of people as a sacrifice and traps them in the maze with the Minotaur to be, I don't know, brutally murdered by the Minotaur and eaten by him. So one night the Prince of Crete comes along to be sacrificed alongside his people, and Ariadne, is that spoilers? Yeah, no, it's on the black. Ariadne falls in love with him and helps him escape the maze, and then we follow the kind of consequences of helping the Prince of Athens escape. So we have two perspectives in this book. We have Ariadne's perspective and Ariadne's younger sister's perspective, and we follow the consequences of Ariadne for helping the Prince of Crete. This is a very feminist retelling of this story, and at first I really enjoyed this book at parts. I think it's a very interesting exploration into how Ariadne was treated and being a woman in that time, and the disgrace of helping the Prince of Athens and the consequences of trusting these men to do the right thing by her. And we see kind of Ariadne... Is that a spoiler? No, it's a spoiler, so I won't say that. But Ariadne ends up very isolated, let's just say that. And I think, yeah, it's an interesting story of how she continues to be a good person and trust people, and men continue to betray her over and over. I especially didn't see the kind of second betrayal coming. I don't know if that's because I don't know the story that well, but to me that was a interesting twist in the plot, and I really enjoyed the discovery and the trickery that even you as a reader fell for. Maybe only because I don't really know the story that well, but yeah, the trickery I also fell for, and how I was also manipulated as the reader into trusting certain male characters in this book. And yeah, I think this is overall meant to be a story of two sisters trying to find each other again after being separated by many years, and how the same men have fucked both of them over in different ways. And I thought it was going to be a beautiful story of these two sisters trying to find each other again, and for what felt like a very feministy kind of tale for most of this book, didn't really end in a very satisfying way. And maybe that's the point. Maybe it's like these women can't get proper justice for how they've been treated, but I really wanted a really satisfying ending. I wanted to see justice. I wanted to see revenge. We had two very intelligent female main characters, one of them very driven and cunning, and I just think that I didn't get the satisfying revenge that I wanted, and the ending kind of fell quite flat for me. Yeah, I found the ending really unsatisfying and really frustrating, and I was just like, this ending sucks. So yeah, I had such a mixed experience, because I think the writing was really good in this book, and it just felt like it was, yeah, an unsatisfying ending. So yeah, I think it's a good book overall. I just think it didn't end how I wanted it to. So have you read this book? Is it meant to be an unsatisfying ending as like a commentary about women? I don't know. I did give it 4 stars because overall I did enjoy it, and I think the writing was really beautiful, and I did really enjoy a lot of this book. And yeah, so 4 stars. I think it would have been a 4.5 or 5 if it had have ended differently, but overall I think the writing was really beautiful and really well done, and it's a very interesting retelling of this story. Next up, I read Look Closer by David Ellis. I picked this book up in audio because I keep seeing this author everywhere, and I feel like he's really popular, and I keep seeing him a lot recently. This book sucked. This is about this wealthy woman who's kind of found hanging in her home, and yeah, how did she end up dead? So we follow this couple, and one of them's basically like a crazy man, and the other one is like a support women, and she helps run a shelter for women that have experienced domestic abuse, emotional abuse, partner abuse, you know, all of the above. And you kind of follow both their perspectives, him being really creepy and her being someone with a kind of shady history, and a lady with a plan, let's just say. I honestly can't remember much about this book. I genuinely sat here for about 10 minutes with the camera rolling, trying to remember anything to say about this book, other than I remember not liking it. I remember the reveal sucking. I remember it being very silly and convoluted towards the end. I was like, okay, there's too many twists happening now. And that's all I can think to say about this book, was I didn't enjoy it. It was convoluted. And I'm sorry, that's a really shit review, but it's genuinely all that I can remember about this book. So I gave it 3 stars, which again was probably too generous, so I might move that down to 2 stars, because clearly I can't remember a single thing about it. It was very unmemorable book. Okay, time for the final book. The sun has set since I started filming this. I meant to finish it before the sun set, but as usual I yap too much and make too many mistakes, so it's time to finish this video. Final book, Loki, Where Mischief Lies, another Marvel fanfiction retelling by Mackenzie Lee. We follow Loki as a teenager, and he's sent to Earth as punishment for his behavior, and he has to help this bunch of humans who are in charge of like supernatural investigations. With this mystery that's kind of been happening in 19th century London. So I had the same problem with this book that I had with Nebula and Gamora. This book is about Loki developing and maturing as a teenage boy. It is interesting how it explores Odin and his relationship and how he feels that no matter what he does, he can't escape what people think of him or think his fate is going to be. So that's interesting in terms of like that exploration of identity and how the people view him, that how that affects what he thinks of himself. So I liked that side of it. Yeah, it was set in 19th century London, and it's kind of meant to be this mystery about how all these bodies are kind of showing up in a mysterious kind of supernatural way. I saw that coming miles away. It was incredibly obvious. I don't know if that's because this is meant to be a YA book and I'm an adult, but it was incredibly obvious who was behind that. It was never going to be anyone else but that person. And again, the same issue I had with Gamora and Nebula. We see Loki develop in this book and mature and go through a challenge and overcome it, and grow as a person and as he's slowly becoming a man. And then the ending just like completely undoes the character growth, just like Gamora and Nebula. Exactly the same issue, and it's the same author, so she's just done it twice. This is fan fiction. This is not canon. We don't have to have the character meet up to how we know him in the Marvel Cinematic Universe or the comics. This is its own story. It doesn't have to end like that. It's a reimagining. You can have Loki become whatever you'd like him to become. So that was really frustrating because, again, I just read this whole book for nothing. And the mystery was not a mystery at all. It was obvious. And I just feel like this had potential to be really fun, and it wasn't. So I ended up giving this 3 stars. A very unsatisfying ending, a very unsatisfying mystery, and incredibly frustrating in terms of, again, undoing character growth and development. Those were the 15 books I read in the months of May and June. Let me know in the comments below. Have you read any of the books that I talked about? What were your opinions? Did you agree with my opinions on them? Did you have different opinions? Let me know. And also let me know what was your least favourite read of May. I want to know the tea. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Give it a like if you did, and subscribe if you'd like to see more of my content, and I will see you in whatever the hell I post next. Bye!